What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Homie Hector here, and today we're working on this 2016 Nissan Quest with a 3.5 liter engine, and we're gonna be doing spark plugs on this van. So if you got a 3.5 V6 that you need to do spark plugs on, then this is a video that you want to watch. Let's go. Bah. Alright, so here we have a look under the engine bay. Now I know at first look it looks a little bit intimidating because everything is crammed down in there. Now this is a V6 engine, so 3 of your spark plugs are going to be right here in the front, and 3 of your spark plugs are way back there under the intake manifold. So we're going to start off by removing all these little clips right here that are holding the cowl down to the rest of the body, and then we're going to remove the wipers, the wiper motor, and that's going to give us access to the intake manifold so that we can get it out, get to the back 3 spark plugs. We can do the 3 spark plugs in the front, and then we can put everything back together. So let's get started with this 3.5 liter engine spark plug R&R. Alright, like I said, we're going to start off by removing this whole wiper cowl assembly, starting with the wipers and then the rest of this plastic. Remove these little covers. And there's a 14mm nut right there that we got to remove. Now before you take any of this off, you want to keep an eye on these wipers, and if you can, mark where they are at so that when you put everything back, everything goes back into the exact same spot. I'm going to be using my Bosch impact driver, but if you have hand tools, go ahead and use hand tools. I'm just using this because it makes it a little faster. 2 14mm nuts holding the wiper blades down. There it is. All that's holding this wiper arm in place is these little ridges right there. So it's pretty much just pressure holding it in, so you can just wiggle it out and pull it up. In some cases you will need a wiper arm puller. I'll put a link to another video that I did up here on the right hand top of your screen so that you can see how I use a wiper arm puller to get it out. Same thing with the other one. When you're wiggling this out, you want to try and grab it from here when you're wiggling, and at the same time you want to take a little pressure off of there like that by bending this. Remove all these little clips so that you can remove the wiper cowl out of the way. If you're having trouble removing this, go back and double check everything to make sure that you get all the clips out, because you don't want to break anything. It's plastic. If it's old, it's brittle and it will break on you. There's these little tabs right here that are holding this piece of plastic over here to the rest of the cowl, so you want to go ahead and squeeze those tabs and push it through out of the way like that. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now we should be able to remove the wiper cowl from the car. It's stuck right here on the glass, so you want to put it away from the glass. Okay, now over here on the passenger side of the van, you have this wiper washer hose. This is where the washer fluid comes into the spray nozzles. You want to be careful with this hose because it is attached to the rest of the cowl. So what I'm going to do is swing it over this way. On this wiper cowl, you can actually undo the hose from here, from this white connection, and this way we can remove the whole wiper cowl from the car. Be careful not to break that white fitting. So twist it at the same time you pull away, and there it is. Now I'm going to get it out of here, and I'm going to leave it hanging over here on this side. Now I can safely remove this entire wiper cowl from the vehicle. Alright, so this is where we're at right now. You can see how much more space we have just by removing that wiper cowl. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this entire piece right here with the wiper motor, and that's going to allow me to work on the rest of the car and safely remove that intake manifold from the vehicle. Again, using my little impact driver with a 10mm on the end. Alright, so the very first thing you got to do here is remove this wiper motor. There's a 10mm nut right there. There's another one right here, and there's another one over here. Once we remove those 10s, you can remove the wiper motor from the vehicle. I'm going to unplug the motor from here. And there it is. This is a wiper motor. A 10mm right here, a 10mm down here, and another 10mm bolt down here. And the wiper motor comes off. Just gotta unplug it and unclip the harness from this little chingadera right there. Now we can continue removing the rest of the 10mm bolts holding this chingadera in here. Now if you're worried about removing all these nuts and bolts and mixing them up, don't worry about it, because the 3 that are holding the wiper motor in place are longer than the other ones that are holding the rest of that aluminum housing in place. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this reservoir and unbolt it from this, just because it looks like it's gonna be in the way. So there's a pin here. We can just lay it down and out of the way. Then we can unclip the rest of this harness away from this housing. Once we've unclipped it, we gotta push this wire through the cowl like that, and we'll just leave it here for now. Once you have all the 10mm nuts and bolts out of there, there's a 13mm bolt over there and a 13mm bolt over here that attach to the top of the strut. You want to go ahead and remove those two before you can remove this aluminum housing out of the way. Looks a little something like this. 13mm bolt. Okay, now we should be able to reach in there and remove this out of the car. But we can't. Alright guys, here on the passenger side, before we're able to remove this aluminum housing out of the car, there's some plastic covers right here that cover the top of the strut bolts, and there's another nut right there hiding under that plastic cover. So remove this from the car and remove it out of the way. Same thing as the other ones we took off earlier. Okay, here on the driver's side of the car, you can actually take off these little plastic covers with your hand. You don't need special tools for this. Just get this out of the way and you'll be able to see the 13mm nut right there that we need to remove. Same thing. Now with all the nuts and bolts removed, we should be able to pull this aluminum housing out of the car. And check it out guys, now without the wiper cowl, the wiper motor, and the wiper blades removed, we have a lot of room now so we can work on removing our intake manifold so that we can do the rest of the job, get the spark plugs out and get the new ones in and go on with the day. First thing I'm going to do is swing out the brake reservoir out of the way along with this little harness because it goes attached to the brake reservoir. So I'm just going to put it over here behind the fuse box because we're going to start removing all of this plastic out of here, starting with this air intake chingadera, the air cleaner, the air box, and this plastic to start off. For this plastic, two 10mm bolts. Alright, so there's four 10mm nuts on this cover. The fourth one is down here, but it's hidden and there's no axis through the top. So what you're gonna need is a little 10mm ratcheting wrench like this. You wanna get it in here and ratchet it off until this cover is loose. Then you can remove this cover out of here because Nissan decided to go with this little design right here when they could have just made some access through the top. Come on, Nissan. Now we're gonna start removing all of this. Kind of looks similar to a Toyota engine if you ask me, but right now we're gonna start removing the air cleaner over here, then we'll work our way that way so we can remove the intake manifold. From here on out, it's just figuring out what connectors to disconnect, what vacuum lines to disconnect. Some of the vacuum lines are going to stay on the intake manifold. Some of them will have to be removed. So I'm trying to figure out little by little what stays and what doesn't stay. This way, when I remove the intake manifold, I don't take unnecessary extra stuff off. And this way, it's going to be easier to install when I'm putting everything back together. There's a vacuum hose back here. Let's start with this one. Move it out of the way. This is for the brake booster. We'll lay it back there.
Papi.
Alright, so there's four 10mm bolts and two 10mm nuts holding the manifold in. I like to do it this way, so I start off by loosening the manifold right here, and then I wiggle it and wiggle it until I find everything that needs to be taken off around the intake manifold. On the throttle body, I have two coolant hoses, but instead of removing the coolant hoses and undoing them from there, I'm actually going to remove the throttle body and get it away from the intake manifold. This way I don't lose any coolant, I don't leak anything, and it'll be less messy. For the throttle body, I'm going to be using a 5mm hex socket. This ratchet makes quick work of removing nuts and bolts, and it fits in tight spaces. Really good battery life. Get one of these. So with the throttle body loose, I'm just gonna move it out of the way and I'm gonna put it off to the side. You can see that if I would have disconnected those coolant hoses, it would have been messy. I would have been leaking coolant. This way I don't have to worry about that. Now I can start wiggling my manifold and see what else needs to come off. Now on these types of engines, there's usually brackets holding the manifold onto the block or onto the head. So I gotta look back here to see what's holding the manifold in there. So there is a 13mm bolt on the back of the intake, right by the breather hose back there, and it's coming in this way, so remove that so you can take off your manifold.
Okay.
Now let's see what else is holding the manifold in. There's something else holding it in. Yeah, that little hose right there. Gotta push that one out of the way, so go. Now the intake should come right off. Break the seal. There it is. Okay, so the intake manifold is free to come out of the car. Alright guys, you can see that after a couple minutes of working, all of this has been removed. So now with the intake out of the car, we can access the back 3 spark plugs right there. We can access the front 3 spark plugs right there. So let me show you everything that has been taken out of the car. Intake manifold right here. You can see it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fasteners holding it down. On the side, there's nothing holding it in, but you have this hose back here that goes to the brake booster. You have this breather hose right here, and then you have one fastener that goes right there, and this goes onto that bracket right there, and there is that breather hose. Okay, you can see this other hose that we just took off right there. That one goes right here on the intake manifold, so it's not a lot. It's 3 hoses on the back, and then there's that fastener right there, and that's it. The rest is pretty simple. All the bolts and nuts right there on the front. I did undo that solenoid, and I did undo this solenoid right there just to make it easier. So this is everything that has been taken out of the car to get it to look like this. Alright, so now that we have this, we're going to do the plugs right now. We're going to do the 3 spark plugs in the back. We're going to do the 3 spark plugs in the front. Then we can start putting everything back together the way it came. Alright guys, spark plugs just went back in the car. A couple tips I can give you guys is to put some rags where the intake manifold was so that nothing falls down into the engine, and also clean this surface really good. Alright, so we did that. Spark plugs are in, coils are back in. Now the intake is about to go back in. Now it's always a good idea, and I've told you guys in other videos, to replace your intake manifold gasket, which is this one right here. But I wasn't able to get it today, so I'm gonna pop this back in just the way it is. Now this gasket is still good. It sticks out further than the plenum, so it's not flattened out. It's still good to go. But if we do have any issues with this intake gasket, then I would warranty this job 100%. But I'm making the call and I'm saying that this gasket is still good. We're not gonna have any issues. And another thing was that this customer actually needed the car back today, so I can't keep the car any longer than today. The gasket was actually special order, so we're doing it like this. But if you guys have this out and you have time, get a new gasket for it. If you can, replace it. So this, I'm about to drop this intake back in, and then we're gonna put the rest of the stuff, and it's just gonna be a backward procedure from here on out. So let's go. Make sure there's nothing in there that can get pinched, nothing that can get caught by the intake manifold. Make sure there's no wires or hoses down in there. Okay, one thing I'm gonna do is make sure that this hose goes back where it came from, which was under the intake and up. Make sure everything's routed properly. So I'm just gonna put these in here loosely.
It's metal.
Alright, so I got these two little bolts that are about to go back in. One tip I can give you guys is to stay organized. Keep all your nuts and bolts together. For example, I kept all the intake manifold bolts together. I kept the throttle body bolts together. I kept these two little ones together. One of them goes on the throttle body. The other one goes over here on this solenoid that I took off. So keep organized. This is going to make everything so much easier. Keep everything organized. It's going to make quicker, cleaner work. Alright, after this, I just got to make sure all my connections go back where they came from. Black goes to black, brown goes to brown, gray goes to gray. This is a good thing that they mark it for you that way, so you don't have to, this way there's no chance of getting the connectors confused. Plus, the length of some of them will not reach the length of the others. So this is good. Then the throttle body goes back in, and as you guys can see, I didn't remove the coolant hoses, so there was no coolant leakage. I don't have to top it off or bleed any of the cooling system. That is a good thing. So let me keep working here. I'll keep putting everything back. Make sure you start all the nuts and bolts by hand, a couple threads. Once you have them a couple threads in, then you can go ahead and zap them with your impact or your power tools if you're using power tools. But always start them by hand, this way you don't cross thread anything and make it a long day for yourself. Alright, next up is the intake manifold nuts and bolts. I'm going to install these loosely because I still have to install that one nut or that bolt in the back of the intake manifold that goes to the bracket. And if you tighten these up first, then it's going to be a pain in the ass to install the back one. So install these loosely or install the back one first and then do these. Now I'm going to install the nut that goes on the back of the manifold to the bracket. So right now I got everything loosely installed. I'm going to tighten up the manifold bolt first so that I get a good seal right here on the manifold. Then I'll go ahead and tighten up that back 13mm bolt. Then it's all downhill from here, guys. Let's go. That's tight. You can see that manifold's not moving. This is good to go, guys. So from here, I'm gonna put everything back, put the wipers, put the wiper cowl, put everything back. I'm gonna finish up the job, and then we're gonna go for a test drive after everything's put back together. And there it is, guys, 2016 Nissan Quest with a 3.5 liter engine. Spark plug replacement with intake manifold removal, something you can do at home with your basic hand tools. All we needed was an 8, a 10, a 13, a 14, and a 5mm hex, some pliers, and maybe some screwdrivers. This is something you can do at home today. Takes a couple hours. If this video helped you guys out in any way and you guys want to support the channel, don't forget to go to the store tab on the channel. I got merch, I got stickers. You just go to the store tab, click on it, it'll take you directly to the stickers on Teespring. You can order as many as you want. All the tools that were used in this video and any of my other videos will be linked in the description for you guys to buy. So that's it, guys. I'm gonna end it here. Thanks for watching. Peace out.